I'm Jason Sanders, Alabama's candidate for U.S. Senate in 2020, Republican. I wanted to take a few minutes to throw together a quick video to kind of share my ideas on some of the methods that I would use to help slow down illegal immigration, even without a wall. Now let me just say up front that I'm a huge supporter of the wall, and that it's my opinion that most people who find themselves leaning a little bit more to the right in terms of their politics would be willing to pay for the wall themselves as U.S. taxpayers, even though it's been so heavily politicized. So let's get right into the hidden cost of illegal immigration. First, anybody who lives in an area that's been heavily impacted by illegal immigration can probably all tell about the same story, and it goes a little something like this. The law enforcement community in that area has been stretched thin, the schools have become burdened, and medical facilities, including health departments, are oftentimes overrun by illegal immigrants who somehow seem to be paying for their visits with Medicaid. All of this in spite of the fact that more often than not, these illegal immigrants have not paid their share of this system. That was a handful of obvious costs, and now on to some hidden costs. Consider that if a single family of illegal immigrants moved into your community, although the impact itself would be pretty minimal, it would also still be measurable. But we're just not dealing with single families. We're dealing with entire city-sized movements in a given year, every year. So the first question we can ask is, where are they getting money? And I think the most obvious answer is, they took jobs. The most common thing that I hear said about that is that illegal immigrants are only taking the jobs that U.S. citizens don't want to work, but that simply isn't true. The fact is, those jobs used to be worked by American citizens, but at some point, enough illegal immigrants came in and took those jobs and pushed those wages well below a living wage, and so American citizens looked for other places to find work. And since most of the time they're working tax-free, what this ultimately comes down to is that not only have they displaced certain American citizens, but they are also doing it at everyone's expense. Now this one is bound to stir up some controversy, but the fact is, illegal immigrants are getting their money from welfare. Now I can already hear my opponents saying that illegal immigrants don't qualify for welfare, and that may be true in some sense, but you'll never convince me that they're not getting welfare in some capacity. Simply put, every single time I go to the grocery store, I see illegal immigrants paying for their food with some sort of government program. A recent census report cited that 63% of non-American households are on some sort of welfare. Even counting the fact that illegal immigrants themselves may not necessarily qualify, they're still getting that money. At very least, their children born here are all of a sudden U.S. citizens, and those children do qualify for government assistance. So in the end, they're getting that money without having ever paid in. So where does that money go? Well, it doesn't go to the institutions that are supporting them. Because most of them are not paying taxes, the infrastructure that they use is being used at your expense. They're also taking a lot of money out of the local economies, and they're sending it back home to support their families, and that cause is certainly noble, but it's coming at a pretty high expense to the U.S. citizen. That money that used to flow in your economy is unlikely to ever return. Certainly some of it is staying because, after all, they are paying rent and they're buying vehicles, but even that has a downside. So what's the downside if they're spending some money here in our economy? After they've taken jobs, taken money, stressed your infrastructure, and put a strain on your institutions, they are now occupying low-cost housing and buying up the low-cost vehicles, creating an artificially high demand for those items and driving the cost of those items up. In other words, not only have they displaced workers and stressing a local economy, but they're also making it more expensive for the very people that they have displaced. Illegal immigration disproportionately impacts the lowest income earners in our nation, while at the same time driving wages lower and the cost of living higher. It really comes down to pretty simple supply and demand math. If you think about it in terms of a huge number of illegal immigrants pushes wages low because now there's a huge surplus of available workers, but there's a shortage in housing and there's a shortage in low-cost automobiles, now you have low wages and higher cost of living. The temptation is to say that sooner or later it evens itself out and the economy returns to normal, but the fact is, more and more illegal immigrants just keep coming, and so this problem never seems to work itself out. There is just no way around the fact that we have to try to stop illegal immigration. Now, I'm not so naive as to believe that we could ever 100% stop it, but it seems to me that we're almost encouraging it with some of our policies. For instance, American citizen workers are unattractive to hire by local employers because an employer in many ways is penalized for hiring a worker. Consider that I used to have a worker that I paid $15 an hour, but by the time I complied with all the government rules and regulations and employer matching, he actually cost me $21.60 an hour. Compare that to 2 illegal immigrants that I could get for $10 an hour cash each, and I could get 2 employees for the price of 1. Also consider that by the time my legal employee paid taxes on his $15 an hour, he's basically bringing home about the same thing as the 2 illegal immigrants we're bringing home at $10 an hour straight cash apiece. I think a pretty easy fix is to stop making it a requirement for employers to have to be penalized for hiring U.S. citizens. All this is really doing is encouraging employers to either find a robot to replace workers or to hire illegal immigrants. It's also pretty commonly suggested to me that we penalize employers who are hiring illegal immigrants, and although I'm not necessarily opposed to that, it really comes down to sooner or later somebody is going to find a way around whatever enforcement tactic we use to do that. So I think the problem is best addressed by no longer penalizing American employers for hiring American citizens. The most common objection that I hear on this is that it's going to drive up the prices of everyday items, and although some items will see a price increase, wages will also increase with it. So I don't think we're going to see that much of a difference in actual cost of living. So at the end of the video, I'm going to boil this down to its most basic and say that in addition to border security and border wall, what I would like to see is a situation where we stop penalizing American employers for hiring U.S. citizens and where we stop handing out benefits to illegal immigrants. I would go so far as to argue that the illegal immigrants who are coming here to take advantage of our generosity are probably the same people that need to be staying home in their own country and helping to solve the issues that exist there. We're taking in the most ambitious or the most able to get here, and the people who are most able to solve their nation's problems are no longer living in that nation. So wrapping up this last minute thrown together video, I'm going to say head on over to timetestedpolitics.com if you feel the way that I do and show your support. One way you can show your support is by clicking that donate button. Even small donations are welcome. A donation of $5 would be put to good use in my campaign because campaigning is expensive and there's just no way for me to do it alone. If you can't contribute financially, that's no problem. You can share my videos on social media. If I'm going to be able to compete with the well-established and the well-funded, I need a wave of social media to move me into the forefront of people's thoughts when it comes time to vote. And lastly, if you just don't like talking politics on social media and donating just isn't in the cards for you, that's okay too. Casting a vote is the one thing that you can do that we know seals the deal. Let's keep Alabama red and put the nation back on the right track.